She got some.
It's because it's not you.
There you go.
At this time, I'll call the December 2nd meeting to order. And at this time, if I'll ask Commissioner Dotson to lead us in a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance.
I stand. Have a moment of silence. Thank you. Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As you know, this is the organizational meeting of the board. The first item of business is the election of the chairman for the upcoming year. Before we elect the chairman, the commissioners do decide how you wish to vote. In practice, you have voted by voice, rising, ballot, or a show of hands. So if there are any motions for how to vote to elect the chair.
Madam Barrister, I would ask for a ballot, please.
Okay? Any other? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So I will pass out the ballot, and if you will make sure that you sign the ballot and then pass them back to the clerk, he will tally them up.
You gotta pass it down.
Oh, I'm keeping it. All right.
So two unsigned.
Oh, we sign it.
Yeah.
All right, for the upcoming year, the chair will be Commissioner Amy Dalrymple, and that was a unanimous vote. At this time, the second item of business is voting for the vice chair for the upcoming year, so I'll pass out the ballots for that as well.
Workout done.
All right, there were 5 votes for Commissioner Cameron Sharp as vice chair and 1 for Commissioner Del Plazo, so Commissioner Sharp. The third item of business is for the board to determine the meeting time, date, and place for the regular board meetings. The resolution is in your packet. We've kept it the same for the meeting to be on the first and third Monday of each month at 6 p.m. with public hearings held shortly thereafter. And if the board wishes to change that for this upcoming year, now would be the time. And then
Move to leave it as it is.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The last order of business for the organizational part is the annual examination of the official bonds. As you know, by statute that there are official bonds that have to be set by employees each year. The sheriff's bond is $25,000, register of deeds is $50,000, and then every other officer in the county who is required by law to give a bond for the faithful performance of his or her duties, which include the tax administrator in the amount of $100,000, finance director in the amount of $100,000, and then any employee who handles $100 or more at any time. And there's backup where we have contacted the insurance company to get those as well. So are there any motions?
So moved.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and before I turn it over to Commissioner Dalrymple, just so you know, at your desk under the consent agenda, for the Health Department grant for $42,037 for hurricane relief funding, we have received the contract. We got that after the agenda had been released. And so I know on the abstract it asked to authorize the chair to sign the contract, and it's been reviewed, and there's no matching required. So I was just going to let you all know that it's actually at your seat now. So with that, I will sit down.
Thank you, Ms. Parrish, and thank you, board. Look forward to a really good, productive, busy year. The meeting with the manager earlier, and that's a lot going on and good stuff. So with that, are there any additional items to be added to the agenda?
Congratulations
Thank you.
to both of you.
Thank you. Any items? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, any questions or comments? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. I'm sorry, the agenda. Okay, the
Additional
approval.
agenda.
I'm so sorry. Okay, the approval of the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve tonight's consent agenda.
Okay. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, public comments?
Oh, really check.
Okay, thank you. All right, old business. The zoning map amendment recommendation from the planning board and ordinance for zoning map amendment request for one vacant 43-plus acre tract of land with frontage on Cox Maddox Road and Wilmer Road from RA to RR. Hello, Marshall.
Hello, good
Welcome.
afternoon.
Good
Thank you.
afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. As the Madam Chair indicated, this is a recommendation from the Planning Board. It is for 43 plus or minus acres off of Cox Maddox Road, along with access to Wilmer. You may recall Ms. McNeil gave a detailed public report during the public hearing comment period back in November. Pretty straightforward. This request is to go from the current RA residential agricultural to RR residential restricted, which would allow smaller lots. For basically, Brandon Harrington is here representing the developer. He is interested in basically constructing a subdivision on this property. That will come back to you all at some point through a preliminary plat, so you'll get to see that again. I'll pause there just as a reminder. At the bottom of page 42 in your staff report, you do have to take 2 votes on a rezoning. One is to make a comment or a consistency statement with the long-range plan, and the second would be a vote for the actual zoning change. And I'll pause again if there's questions.
Any questions? Is there a motion for the first vote?
Madam Chair, I move that the rezoning request appears to comply with the Plan San Lee countryside designation, and that it allows single-family homes on a lot size that promotes a rural lifestyle and on land that is accessed via public roadway. Therefore, I make a motion that the request is consistent with the adopted long-range plan.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. And then is there a motion to approve or a motion to deny the rezoning request?
Move to approve.
Okay, any questions or comments?
With the facts that are listed in motion on option 1 in the agenda package.
I beg your pardon?
With the facts that are listed on motion option 1, there has to be facts.
I thought that's what I said.
Good to go then. Fair enough.
Okie dokie. All right, so the motion is for option 1 to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Okay, item B under old business is Project Safe Neighborhoods. And I'll kind of defer to Dr. Crumpton.
At least for now. Yes, before you had a modified MOU that we developed to be more in line with what we thought was what the program was supposed to be on. But after some discussion with the other parties involved, last week after the agenda packet went out, there was some confusion as to how the coordinator position would work, who would actually employ that person. I believe at the last meeting, you remember that I thought it would be a county position, and the other parties were kind of up in the air on that, and then voiced their opinion that maybe we need to discuss that further. So there seems to be still a not a meeting of the minds at this point. So I believe probably the proper thing to do is to table this until a point in time where we do have a meeting of the minds.
So move. To table.
Any other questions or comments? I think along
But-
with.
I'm sorry, just a question? Yeah. Is this involving the city, town of Broadway, and the county, state, district attorney's office? I mean, how many people
That's a
are-
good question. There are 4 parties: the town of Broadway, the city of Sanford, the county, and the district attorney office. So the U.S. Attorney's Office is not actually involved in the MOU from the standpoint of how we're going to hire the coordinator. They leave that up to the local jurisdiction and the DA.
And I think in talking with the manager earlier, maybe the best thing to do would be for myself and the 2 mayors and the DA and the sheriff to get together and kind of go over things and, get clarity, I guess, as far as how we're going to move forward. I like the program, but before we sign the MOU, we just need to make sure everybody's clear on responsibilities and accountability and all that kind of thing. And in the conversations that have taken place between the last meeting and today, we just need to get clear on some things before we sign on. So, but again, it's a good program. Just got to make it work. So, all right, there's a motion to table. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. And I will work very hard to get that meeting put together as quickly as possible. Okay, new business, memorandum of understanding for the Veterans Treatment Court. Ms. Parrish?
Yes. If you recall, during budget discussions for this year, it was requested that the board, the county, issue some funding for the Veterans Treatment Court that is held in Harnett County. And as part of the fiscal year budget that was already approved, the commissioners approved $85,000 to be given to Harnett County for that, the funding. We have drafted an memorandum of understanding to be signed by you all and then the Harnett County Board of Commissioners as well. I've been in contact with their attorney. I believe that once we approve this evening, then they'll take it to their commissioners as well. Basically, it states that we're giving them the $85,000, that they'll have to account for the money, and that it's a one-time funding, that if they needed any additional funding this year or any future years, they'd have to come back to the board to request such funding. So,
Madam Chair, I move to approve the memorandum of understanding for the Veterans Treatment Court.
Any questions or discussion?
Just one, who's gonna do, will our veteran person do the follow-up on how this is, or does it come directly to you or finance, or how?
The 2 managers communicate on the update of this project with the DA's office. So it's really between the legal county manager's office and not so much our veterans office.
And this is no reflection against Harnett. I just know that sometime we lose track of who's supposed to be responsible for tracking money that we're distributing. So it'd be the managers and the DA's office.
And the attorneys and the DA.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I did attend Veterans Court on June 26, and I'll just cover my notes here. First off, the bailiff starts the Veterans Treatment Court with an all standing as presiding judge. Jacqueline Lee enters. The Judge Lee starts with a pledge of allegiance to the flag in a courtroom festooned with service flags and their respective branch seals. After the pledge, one of the mentors recites Today in Military History, followed by a moment of silence for our fallen troops. Each veteran appearing before the court responds to the judge's questions regarding their varying treatment and counseling activities and schedules. After each veteran appearing before the judge completed their assigned task, they would receive an applause from the audience, and many received a reward. And it was interesting to see a judge handing out gift cards as a reward. Special rewards were noted for various periods of continued sobriety. I got to witness veterans starting the program and another's graduation. Both events were very formal and ceremonial. Judge Lee came down and personally presented each veteran with a special reward for this important chapter in their lives. At the conclusion of the graduating veterans ceremony, they had the entire courtroom stand and sing the respective veterans' song, service song of their branch. Unfortunately, the judge remanded one veteran to the custody of the sheriff for 30 days, and another absent veteran, the judge sworn out a warrant for their arrest. The judge, district attorney, Veterans Treatment Court staff, Harnett County bailiffs, and mentors do their best to keep these veterans from 9 various counties on the right path to sobriety. I must admit that based on the situation of the hazards of war, many of these individuals, because of PTSD, turn to alcohol and drugs to deal with the conditions that they have. And it's important that we make sure we continue to support them even as civilians. But I must admit, Harnett County's got one spectacular courthouse facility.
Yeah, they do.
I hate to say I was envious, but that's the way it is.
Yes, that's true. But we're trying. We won't have that, but we're trying. But
Not doing bad.
no, we're not. Thank you for that, Commissioner Smith. It is an important program, and in the MOU, kind of halfway down on the first page, you'll see we had 28 Lee County veterans go through the program, so very important. So, okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any more comments or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Okay, the October 2019 monthly financial report from Senator. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Before you have the October financial report. I will remind you, as always, that sales tax run 3 months behind, so don't be alarmed by that number. As far as property tax revenues, we are about 0.1% ahead of where we were the same time frame last year. Our target expenditure mark would be 33.33% at this time. Of course, with encumbrances included, a lot of our departments are over. If I back those encumbrances out, I only had 2 or 3 departments over. IT is over due to support agreements and equipment purchases, and economic development is over due to the Project Forge land purchase that has occurred. And then planning is a quarterly appropriation, so it is running ahead of what looks to be normal, but that will balance out as the year moves on. You also have sales tax collections through 2 months of the fiscal year, and we are seeing overall, for us, about 8.4% growth overall, and countywide we're seeing about 9% growth. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Good report. Excellent report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, county manager's report.
Yes, ma'am. Our meeting's a little light tonight, so I decided I would discuss the library, classroom building, and the at CCCC and the Sportsplex a little bit more. After last guess that's last month's meeting now, on the 18th. Mr. Schreiner asked about financial implications of these two projects. So on Tuesday, after discussing with our financial advisors that I needed an updated financial plan, we went over that financial plan Tuesday in a conference call, and I'm still going over that plan. It's about 56 pages long and is very detailed and complicated. But when I decided I'd go ahead and talk a little bit about it tonight, just in generality, so that the board would understand assumptions that we work on when we do these financial analysis for debt borrowing, and how conservative we are in our forecasts and estimates. So when the report, when I send it out to you, you'll see that we use a 1% growth rate for the property tax base, and pretty much on average recently we've been averaging between 2 to 3% annual growth, and we expect that growth rate to be higher going forward. We also only use 1% growth rate for sales tax revenues, and over the last 5 years our sales tax revenues have been growing at about 5%. So we're very conservative in using these models that look out about 20 years on how this debt would affect us. So just for planning purposes, the library borrowing would occur in fiscal year 21-22, and a total borrowing of $30 million was assumed. The sports complex bond would call for a referendum in November of 2020, and then the borrowing would actually occur in fiscal year 22-23, and it was a total of $25 million. So one of the other things we had to take into consideration when we were doing the analysis was the debt we'd also be bringing on in the spring for the economic development project, Project Forge. That project also covered debt that we'd be taking on for this building and additional debt at the courthouse for a total borrowing of $8 million. So that project has a zero impact really on us, because the economic development revenue from that project covers the debt payment. So the initial analysis of the library and classroom project and sports complex is a 20-year note, and we used a 5% interest rate. So you'll see that 5% throughout the report. Currently, interest rates are anywhere from 3 to 3.25 on borrowings of this size. So hopefully that market will hold, and we would actually be in good shape. So the impacts I'll talk a little bit about more in a couple of weeks, but depending upon the growth of the tax base and when we time the borrowings, the growth of the tax base would cover the borrowings. So even though I can't say there's a zero tax impact, when we're doing a bond referendum, we have a plan that would show a zero tax base impact. We would probably have to communicate to the public a 4.5 cent in general impact for the sports complex if it came online. But there are ways to reduce that 4.5 cents. Obviously, it's the growing tax base, but we can also do things like borrow the sportsplex money in phases. If the bond passes, you have 7 years to issue the bonds. You can be patient and wait for the tax base to grow and assure that you have zero impact. We're also looking at that interest rate, and probably will borrow at a lower rate. There's also a plan that was provided by the financial advisors where during the construction period we would pay interest only, and that reduced the impact even further if we front load the borrowing, which means up front you go ahead and start setting money aside in your capital reserve fund, and then you use that money to help pay it back. So essentially the plan would be to take what we allocate towards debt service from 7.61 cents of the tax base or the tax rate to 12.5 cents of the tax rate. So, and then that would obviously increase our debt service fund and capital reserve fund, and that would be the maximum impact. So, and that 12.5 cents or that 5 cent increase represents a needed tax base increase of about $370 million. So Pfizer alone is estimated that they say 500 million. So Hopefully, if we do this correctly, and I'll show that to you in 2 weeks, that, you know, the economic development work that's going on right now that would pay for these 2 projects. I'm also working on data. Mr. Reeves has asked several questions about schools. I'm working on ADM data right now from the last 5 to 10 years, showing that ADM has actually gone down in our county. Our population is not growing very fast. But however, if you look forward, and let me see, let me give an exact number from Don. The TRC and the city and the county are in the process, or have been in the process, in some cases, of approving 2,873 residential units. So the expected build-out over those 2,873 units is anywhere from 5 to 8 years. So depending upon what happens in the housing market. So there's an impact there that Don is working on to give me, you know, and also for the schools on what that would mean for students. He did provide me an amazing number. There were 250 apartment units built down in South Park, and only 38 students came out of those apartments. So the apartments don't seem to be having as big an impact on the schools, but we know that single-family homes, like at Gavin's Ridge and Laurel Oaks subdivisions, will in all likelihood bring more children to the schools. So you have to try to estimate that. But the one thing good about increasing the debt service, you know, amount of the tax rate that we can commit to debt service, it creates the ability to borrow money into the future if we stick to that 12.5 cents a lot faster than we create debt service capacity at this point. So that's just kind of a high overview of that, and I'll have all this lovely data out to y'all so you can review it, but I want to review it with Ms. Minter first before we send it out to y'all, because she's the doubting Thomas.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
So anyway, I tell people that we're entering a new phase in Lee County. I mean, this growth phase that's coming towards us, and the growth of our tax base is unique in that the industrial base is arriving first before the residential. Normally it works in reverse, where your residential base comes and then your industrial base comes. So it's almost like you're front end. But that's the purpose of the Machinery Act, is that your industrial base pays for the needs that you have of the community. So we'll have a lengthier discussion on the 16th. I'll be glad to answer any questions that I can at this point.
Are we going to do the same thing as it relates to the possibility of the maximum tax reduction we can offer?
Yes, sir. In the report you get, there's a tax equivalent rate
Okay.
that would take for the borrowing, and that's also a rate that you say, well, if we don't want to do the borrowing, you can take that rate and you could lower it.
Okay.
When the base comes, qualify that. So the base has to be there first.
All right.
So, you know, I'm telling people at the public policy luncheon who were saying, well, y'all could do this, and I said, whoa. I said, you know, the announcement was made in this fiscal year. To count in next fiscal year, they would have had to make the investment by December 31st. And I would tell you that, you know, even though Pfizer is working hard, their complete investment's not going to be on the books December 31st. So it's essentially 18 months before you will get the impact of that full investment out there. So it's, you know, everybody gets excited, but it's our job to kind of slow everybody down a little bit and say we got to wait for that tax base to show up. So it's about timing.
Any questions right now? I think we-
And also, I believe, I hadn't talked to Lisa about this, but I believe our financial report for last year will be presented on the 16th.
If the LGC gives us approval between
Yeah.
now and then.
So hopefully it'll be there by the
LGC approval.
16th, and we can present our financial report to y'all. And it's a good financial report.
We, Dr. Crumpton and I met with Dr. Chapman and Chairman Philpott and Dr. Bryan and Mr. Kelly from the schools this afternoon, just talking about the library project in the Lee Early College. You know, and that's something, again, when we get the financials that everybody, I think, is interested in seeing next time. You know, we do need to make some decisions. We've talked about it a lot, and then as far as the sports complex, if we want to put that on the ballot, you know, we've got a time frame that we've got to do that within to get it on the ballot for next November. So, any other questions or comments or things you want to see for the next meeting, or, okay? You have other things?
I think the attorney would feel good if, we've talked about Project Jupiter in the past, and I think she feels better if you all take a vote to hold a public hearing on Project Jupiter. And right now, it looks like we're aiming towards the 16th meeting to hold that public hearing, so I think she would feel better if there was a motion and a vote to hold that public hearing.
So moved.
Any questions or comments on that? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
That's it for me.
Okay. Wow, okay.
Yeah, we're cruising.
I know. Just don't know. All right, Commissioner comments, Commissioner Smith?
Well, yeah. I went over the notes with our grandson while we were out in the mountains, and he made sure that sports complex gets going. And I said, "But you live in Harnett County." He goes, "Well, I'm speaking on behalf of Taylor."
Cousins looking after cousins.
Exactly. That's it. Have enjoyed the parade tonight.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for supporting the Veterans Treatment Court. It's a very good program. It holds veterans accountable because I deal with those folks. And I mean, I've had like a lieutenant colonel who has PTSD, like you mentioned, you know, taking drug tests 4 and 5 times a week. So it's not a piece of cake to go through this program, and it's I think it's money well spent by the county.
Well, let me ask you a question regarding that. How involved does it include mental health programs?
Yes.
And how do you track that, or is that something that you know already?
If I can add to it, on my report, I didn't tell you that when I got in there, they gave me an entire dossier on everybody who was appearing for the court that day. And because of privacy issues, I'm not going to discuss anything other than it was the entire background on each individual, when their last test was, what the results were. Some of them were positive, some of them had, relapses and such. So it was quite intense, but they're very much in turn. They also had mentors, and many of these mentors had gone through the program. And these individuals were kind of like, their guardian angel, so to say, constantly following, tracking, staying with them, staying in contact with them. So it's pretty in-depth. It's not like Cameron says, it's pretty intense.
Well, it's just like the Safe Neighborhood Program. If we don't have a significant piece requiring mental health participation, I'm not so sure that person's going to commit to be a serious part of rehabilitation or re-entry into the community. So that's why I'm asking the question regarding mental health. That's why it's important to know how the money is being spent, where the bulk of the money is going.
And I think that new position will help us with
Would
that.
help, yeah. Right.
But I mean, it takes a commitment just for someone to drive up to an office 4 and 5 days a week just to give a drug test.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
I don't disagree at all.
That's tough, that's a lot.
That's it.
I just trust everybody had a great Thanksgiving, and those of you that are going to parade tonight, bundle up. It's going to get cold, probably.
Yeah, well, talking again about the Safe Neighborhood Project, I know Commissioner Dalrymple and myself and Dr. Crumpton and some of our staff has gone to numerous community meetings aimed at our at-risk youth. And for so many of those kids in the neighborhoods that we're talking about for this project have parents who are incarcerated or have been incarcerated. And in our meetings, one of the main things we keep hearing is it takes a village. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a community that cares about them, not the government, but a community. And for a lot of those kids who have parents who are incarcerated, they're not getting that parental guidance. And either they're in the care of another family member or they're not in anyone else's care. And so there are a lot of other components that we have to look at. And we have Miss Crystal McIver in our audience, and she, if anyone has talked to her, knows how passionate she is about our community and about just not just a program, but a process of getting ex-offenders who are trying to assimilate back into society and do it in a way that connects with the resources we already have. So all of this to be said that this is a good program, and I'm glad that this coordinator position is something we're talking about moving forward, but it's just a piece of the whole puzzle of making a safe neighborhood. So that's important. And also, a year ago today was when I had my swearing-in ceremony, and it's just in reflection on this year. I want to just thank all of you for this board, and it takes a lot of courage to run for office, and it takes courage to be in this position. And so I thank all of you for your efforts, and I look forward to 2020. This was a great year for our county, and I think 2020 will be just as good.
Goes by fast.
It does. Blink of an eye.
Commissioner Reeves.
That's why I support one meeting a month. I would encourage us all to start considering the need for affordable housing. I will tell you, and I've said it before, it's not always the upper crust, the upper level of management that comes here and actually performs the actual work. There are people on these jobs that are finding it difficult to find housing, decent housing. And at some point in time, the city and county both have got to start looking at affordable housing in a more serious manner than we are. Having success and people not being able to live here is only half successful. We want people to come, work, live, play, and do it all right here. But they've got to be able to afford it. So I think the county needs to start considering an affordable housing program in some manner. Thank you.
You're welcome. We didn't rehearse that, Commissioner Reeves, but at our last Triangle J meeting, Wednesday before last, there were two main issues that we talked about. That it was one of the longer meetings that we've had, and they were transportation and affordable housing. And that's one of the things that we talked about. We kind of have a transportation task force group, and we've got an affordable housing task force group. But when we start talking about both issues, they really go together. And traffic, of course, is an issue, and anytime we have to go to the Triangle J office, which is there off Emperor Drive, they're off Page Road in Durham, you either take the toll road or I-40, and it's insane. And that meeting of all times is at 5:30 in the afternoon. So I try to go over way early if I can and beat the madness. So we're working on it from a regional perspective, Commissioner Reeves, and I think the mayor and I have talked some about working on it more locally as well. That's the thing with Triangle J is, we all realize we've got people that live here that, go up US 1 every morning, or 15501 or 421 or down 87. And then we have people that live in those communities, counties that come into Lee County to work. So we had a very long discussion, and the end of the discussion was we had a lot of heavy lifting to do and wasn't quite sure how to start. But the conversation is beginning.
That's the important part of it.
So we're starting, and any advice or input that you have, any of you have that I can carry to those meetings, I would really appreciate it.
Is this from the city of Sanford? It's in our handouts, or in my handout anyway.
That was the picture of
Proposed plan?
Yeah, that was the trail,
The train.
railroad station
Yeah,
downtown.
that looked like Chatham Street here
Mhm.
and going around.
And again, that was part of the transportation discussion we had, was the
Yeah.
S line. I think as far as transportation goes, when the light rail plan with the Research Triangle fell through, now I think DOT is really behind. And anybody that goes on some of those highways knows, how hard it is for them to catch up. So they're trying to think outside of the box some, and some of these commuter lines are what they're talking about. I know our neighbors in Johnston County, and we're going to try to get together and talk some more, but their line that the DOT is proposing for them is Smithfield-Selma into Raleigh. On that track line. So they are trying to figure out some way to mitigate some of the congestion coming into Raleigh proper, because they see the future, and they know, they can't build the roads out enough to cover the growth in the next 20 years, so they're trying to figure something out.
Well, if that mega site hits over in Moncure,
Then and we've got Chatham Park as well, that once those homes go up and people are in there, it is going to be a catastrophe if you need to drive anywhere.
Pittsburgh at 7:30 in the morning.
Everybody, that's our conversation in Triangle J, is we all see it coming. It's just how are we going to manage it? Bless you. But I will say, like in a meeting that I was in this afternoon, these are good problems to have. Growth is a good thing. There are a lot of counties that are closing schools and having to raise taxes and can't get new jobs and into their communities. So these growth problems are good problems to have. So have everybody had a good Thanksgiving? Lots to be thankful for. And I appreciate the confidence this board gives me, but we're a great team. Everybody brings something to the table, and I enjoy working with everybody. And I do think we're going to have a really good year. And to our county staff, best in the country, without question. And I'm so proud of everything that we do. We're small, but we're mighty. That's what I tell everybody. When I go meet at Triangle J with the Wick counties and the Orange counties and the Durham counties, they're good, but we're great here in Lee County. Okay, good place to be. So with that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I didn't make that.